Good evening, everyone, and welcome and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Sam Beek. I'm a FA National Goalkeeping Coach and Coach Educator. I've got alongside me here with me is Anthony White, National Goalkeeping Coach and Coach Educator, and also Adrian Tucker, who is a National Goalkeeping Coach and Coach Educator. So we all work with the national teams. We all work across both A licence and B licence courses. I'd like to firstly thank you for watching the webinar on the role of the goalkeeper out of possession. I hope you found it all very beneficial and useful. Tonight is going to be an opportunity for us to discuss some of the pre-question themes that were sent to you relating to the webinar. And just to remind you of what those were, the first one was, when we are selecting goalkeepers, do we consider the profile of the goalkeeper based upon how we want our team to play out of possession? The second question that we asked you to look at was, what are the effective actions we need our goalkeepers to produce out of possession, and how else can they proactively manage the game? And then the third question we asked you to look at was, when designing practices and determining outcomes, what considerations do we have to support or stretch the goalkeeper? Just like to mention as well that if you've got any burning questions that you feel that we haven't covered within those three sections, or something that you think is relevant and you'd love to pop it into the live chat, please do so, and we'll try our best to answer as many questions as we possibly can. Just a little reminder for those of you that did watch the webinar, the key considerations at the end of that webinar were in three stages in terms of the goalkeeper before, during and after. So before the event, we're looking at what support position best enables the goalkeeper to manage transitions throughout the game, through his positioning and instruction, and also the effective actions. And then the second one, which was during, so decisive actions that are effective to the situation. And then the last one was after the event, what actions or support do they need to do after the event that they've just done? So I'm going to pass over to Anthony White now, who's going to go through the themes and ask us some of your questions. And like I said, if we don't answer something, please feel free to populate into the box. Over to you, Ant.
Cheers, Sam. So we're going to focus for the first part on theme one. So I'd like to sort of work around 15 minutes, 20 minutes max really on each theme. So for theme one, if we just remind ourselves, when we are selecting goalkeepers, do we consider the profile of the goalkeeper based upon how we want our team to play out of possession? So Miki, a really good question to start here is, how do you help a keeper determine his or her own best distance from the goal to connect with the back line, but not be too far exposed? And then the second part to that is, how high would you actually allow your goalkeeper to go?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think it's probably a question that a lot of you have asked from this webinar. So the best way I can try to explain this would be, you have to think about the style of play that you want to play in your team. So if you've got a team that is a very high press team, very aggressive team, so sort of like if I used to Liverpool as an example, if you look at Alisson and the profile of Alisson as a goalkeeper, he's a very high front-footed goalkeeper. So he fits that style of play perfectly to the team, but also the team fit his profile of how he wants to play out of possession. So that sort of links really well with him. But then if you look at somebody like a Tottenham Hotspur, for example, who may be a little bit deeper in their style of play, look to counter-attack with pace, then they're going to need a goalkeeper who likes to be a little bit deep, but also very quick off his line when he needs to be. So if they're in like a deep block and a ball gets threaded through, then they're going to be sort of, quick off the line. And if you look at Hugo Lloris, he's exactly that type of profile of goalkeeper. So for me, I think the two things come in hand: the style of play you want to play, and also what type of goalkeeper you've got. Because if, like I said, if you switch those goalkeepers, put Hugo Lloris into a high aggressive front foot Liverpool team, he may not be as effective on the team, and you may not be, playing the best way to suit your goalkeeper.
Yeah, interesting that, Mickey. So are there any sort of differences or correlations that you see between the men's and the women's game?
Yeah, I think in terms of the concepts that I've just spoke about, in terms of style of play and how we want the goalkeepers to play linked to the style of play, I think it's very similar, or there's similarities between that. Maybe the key differences to think about within the male and female game, maybe the maturation, the different maturations at different ages. So, you may be working with 14, 15-year-old boys, and some of those may be more physically developed than when you work with 14, 15-year-old girls. So I think just having an understanding of where they are in their maturation sometimes is going to be key to see if they can produce these, effective actions out of position you want them to produce yet. And you might have to just be a little bit more patient, knowing that that's going to come a little bit later down the line. So that I would say that would possibly be the key differences in physicality, a little bit in line with maturation.
And just, I suppose, staying on that topic there, Miki, if we look at the sort of current state in the Euros, we've all seen the Czech Republic goal, versus Scotland. And, you've got a goalkeeper there that's played a lot of games. So his positioning is going to be really consistent over a period of time. Now, how can we, budding the next generation, work with the back line and work with those defensive players or our own players to make sure that they understand the message or understand where that goalkeeper happens to be consistently? You got any advice on that, really?
Yeah, I think I think this has been banding around on social media quite a lot about the David Marshall goal and his positioning in terms of how he affected that goal. So I think the key things for me, without knowing what Scotland were trying to do and how they wanted to play, the key thing for me would again be relating to, okay, what is David Marshall like in terms of when he's in a high position and the ball gets turned over, how quick is he recovering? I think that would have a sort of boundary to me of how far I would want him to come based on how quick he is going forwards and backwards. And then the second thing for me would be the key thing. If we just take it away from Marshall, if you look at the defender shoots from a distance where, if he turns the ball over, if he knows Marshall is going to be only 15, 20 yards behind him, there has to be a risk element to that. And his decision making for that defender probably needs to have a little bit more awareness around that sort of thing. So I would sort of be dripping into my outfield players really and going, look, I'm asking my goalkeeper to play this high. This is how I want to play. So if we turn the ball over, the risk is that we could get done by this type of goal. So just sort of having that awareness and that decision making around the outfield players, knowing that that's what the goalkeeper's position is going to be like. But again, just to reiterate my point, it's got to be key. Is the way you want to play fitting the style of the goalkeeper as well? So that would be again what I would see and reflect from the Scotland game.
Yeah, really interesting that, Mickey, because I suppose a couple of points that you've raised there along the lines of maturity. You probably got a goalkeeper at 9 years old who might position slightly different to, your Scotland goalkeeper who's in his 30s. You've got a physical constraint at one end at 9 years old, then you might have a physical constraint at the top end. And somewhere in between, they're going to find a different balance of either being really proactive because they can action that, or drop in slightly deeper because they can't action that. So I think the maturity point is really key, and then linking that to obviously what the team needs. So Tux, I suppose the next part is quite key, which is, you've got goalkeepers up and down the country, all across the world, that are struggling with starting positions out of possession. And I'm not saying there's a magical formula here, but have you got any ideas in terms of, positions on the pitch in relation to, some quirky ideas as to where the goalkeeper could be?
Mm-hmm. First of all, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the webinar also. It is a challenge, and it can affect, as you said, goalkeepers at different ages. But if I was to try to probably sum it up to support the coach out there, to give the advice to the goalkeeper to really, really make it, really basic for them. I've just got a little slide to just show. Now, you might have seen this before, and I do apologize if you have, but for me, it's the best formula for goalkeepers at a really young age, and will also relate through to goalkeepers, even the David Marshalls playing in the Euros now, to be aware of. So nice and simple. We're playing from bottom up, defending the goal down the bottom. So if the ball is there shown in zone A, nice and simply, position for the goalkeeper, will be around zone A there. So you literally split in the pitch into 3/3, into thirds, and also the penalty area in the same format there. So you'll be ball side, of your half a pitch, as you see with a highlighted by the glove there. And then your distance then would depend on where that ball is in A. So if it's right on the line, as you can see, or near enough on the line, you'll probably be in that bottom half or middle of A. Whereas if it was a little bit further up and in around inside the penalty area, you would probably be in and around the D or just outside the area. Whether you go as far as David Marshall then just comes down to the experience of the goalkeeper. But certainly if he was using something like this for a young academy goalkeeper at 12, 13, 14, I think it's an easy way of showing them. If we move on then as the ball moves, so if the ball is in B, same principle applies there as well. Okay, but the goalkeeper then just takes his position into B. Okay, and again, same format as what I said in wherever that is in B. If it's the top half of B or bottom half of B, your goalkeeper's position will adjust. And really nice and simple, they just draw a line from themselves to the goal through the ball, or from the ball through themselves to the goal. Okay, which will help them in their position. Okay, and then finally going into C, if it drops into this area, then you're going to drop into that sort of 6-yard area and be ready to defend your goal. Okay, so if you were showing them all, it's a nice simple way to show your goalkeeper. And as a visual, if you're a 12-year-old goalkeeper looking at that and trying to understand that, they may be able to relate that when they're playing on a Saturday or on a Sunday.
Yeah, really nice sort of, visual for people to see. And even for outfield coaches, at times we as goalkeeping coaches stand on the sideline or are involved in practices, and the outfield coaches might not know why a goalkeeper is stood there. And I suppose, with your experience, Tux, you've had academy goalkeepers all the way through to first team, and I'm sure you've seen a variety of different positioning across the entire pathway and across your career that has suited each individual goalkeeper.
Definitely, and I'll come down to the individual characteristics as we speak about within, when we talk about profiling the goalkeeper. So it might be down to the speed of the individual. So how quick they are off the line, or how quick they can defend that space outside the area. It might be down to how good they are at actually reading the game and anticipating that through ball. And as a young goalkeeper, it might be something simple like trying to understand our trajectory of the ball will bounce in the end, or the speed of the pass that comes through, because that causes a lot of young goalkeepers a problem. So understanding them concepts is very important in the characteristics. And I know Sam mentioned earlier on about the different goalkeepers, and it sort of came to my mind in the last couple of games of the season. I don't know if everybody can remember, Manchester City played away at Newcastle in a game, and Scott Carson made his first appearance for Manchester City. Now, bear in mind the type of profile and characteristics that Scott Carson would carry over Edison are probably totally different. So the effect that would have on Manchester City defending a high line with a goalkeeper behind would probably show the thought process, one of the goalkeeper, but then two of the team and the outfield players in actually working as a unit with their goalkeeper. And probably you could use the same analogy to Liverpool when Adrian has played instead of Alisson, etc., because your Edisons and Alissons are quite proactive goalkeepers in defending that space, certainly in front of them and outside of that 18-yard area.
So it's quite a nice ending that to bring us on, I suppose, to the next question for you, Miki, which is, Tux there is talking about the modern day goalkeeper, talking about modern day themes, what's occurring, I suppose, in the top end of football. But I suppose my question to you is, do we coach the goalkeepers of today these modern themes and get them into that bracket of what they see day to day? Or do we be quite open and let them almost find their own way with a little bit of guidance?
Yeah, great question. And I think the most important thing to start off with before we think about, technical, tactical and all that sort of stuff, I think the importance needs to be that we create a learning environment for all the players, no matter what age they are, that helps stretch and support them. So making sure we've got an environment, I call it sometimes like safe uncertainty, if that sort of gives you a bit of an idea. So creating an environment where they're not sure what's going to go off, but they're allowed to experiment on different things without the consequence of, being told this is the wrong way, this sort of thing. So that it allows them to be who they want to be and find that themselves. I think that's the most important thing first. And also making sure that when we see the strength in a goalkeeper, that how do we now stretch that and how do we further that on and continue that learning? So that would be the most important thing for me straight away, would be creating that environment and allowing our goalkeepers and players to be the most effective they can be. And I'd always be a little bit cautious around coaching or teaching what we perceive as coaches the goalkeeper to be. So we've mentioned about Alisson, we've mentioned about Lloris and these type of goalkeepers and Edersons, and they are outstanding goalkeepers, world-class goalkeepers. But I think at times we need to be careful that we don't think that we can coach our goalkeepers to be an Ederson, because they're not all going to be Ederson. They're not all going to be Alisson. They're going to be themselves and find different ways of doing it. So I think we need to think about like coaching the goalkeeper in line with what the goalkeepers can do and what are their strengths. And with their strengths, how can we sort of like, make that a super strength? So if we've got a goalkeeper who's outstanding at defending the area in terms of commanding his area, coming for crosses and dealing with it, then we enhance that. We keep him doing that. We make that a big strength of theirs. So if you look at our seniors, unfortunately, Nick Pope is not with us, but he's one of the best goalkeepers I've seen currently defend the area positively. And he obviously fits Burnley's style, but that's his massive strength. And you can see that he just keeps on doing that and really benefits himself and the team that way. So that would be my sort of key take on it, Anne, really.
Yeah, I think, like I say, Mickey, I think we've had a good start there in terms of the theme one. There's been some really key parts, individualistic has been probably the overarching theme, looking at maturity throughout the pathway, whether you're 9 all the way up to, you're 37 years old, it's going to find a different balance and a different crossover at different times. And then I think, the final part there is you being open-minded as a coach, not to almost put your biases towards what you would feel is the perfect or the top way to do something, and for coaches and goalkeepers to find their own way as long as it's effective. So yeah, really interesting points there for me personally.